Turn this around.
Come on. Got it. No.
What is that?
Got it. Got it. In there. Alright. Good. Last one. There we go. Let this. Let this. Oh.
Did you find them all? Are you ready to start writing some definitions?
Drops.
Yes.
One and a half.
I'm gonna trade you. I'll finish the other half.
Oops.
It's a song by Pitbull.
Timber check. Sharp. Now then. Alright. Oh man. Alright then. Oh, shoot. Dang it. This thing will cover up. Oh. Look this way then. Let me see.
I don't know, bro.
Alright.
No, it was number 6.
Dude,
Use major scale.
pardon me.
I don't know. Should do that?
Pardon me, man. All that?
One day we should have a contest. Brett. Come back.
Read this.
I'm proud to say this person. The neck is sharp.
You know the slot man, right?
All of it, all the good things.
Legally retarded.
Yeah, they're cutting down. Still surprising how long someone's been done on.
I don't think you should go back. Hit the button back on. Forward your head.
All the videos
I got it.
I can't find anyone like I'm not used to that. I found myself like, oh, I guess it's hey, you know, you have to find it. Oh, Mr. Rock. Twitch is gonna start having better support for videos. That's exactly what I've never watched Twitch. I don't see it. You spelled wrong.
This can be interesting. Let me try that one more time.
This can be interesting.
Alright, Alex. You know what to do. Here we go, Daniel. One more time. One more time, man. You got Oh,
10 points.
not good. Hey, boom.
How we doing? How we doing? We have some really great sentences right here. I tell you, Terrence. Great job. I told Jamal earlier. 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes. 5 more minutes. How you doing?
I'm doing great.
I'm doing great, man.
Don't copy me, please.
Let me. All right. All right. Great.
Let's shift those buttons just randomly. It's random themes.
What the heck is this came from? You know who came from this? No idea? No problem, man. Oh! Almost.
Should look at where you walk. What are you?
Here.
Okay. That's someone else's backpack.
What?
Oh, that's it.
What?
Hey! Sister! Don't touch me like that!
Yeah,
If you do that again, I will tell on you. I won't tolerate anymore. Sorry, bro.
Let's see here. Boom! All done. What are these?
It still sounds so good. It still sounds really good.
Yo, bro. Uh-huh.
That's the okay. You want me to take out?
Oh, thank you.
One minute. 1 minute.
Science, English, Spanish history.
Already? Here we go. Let's hear a few sentences. So, Andre, we're gonna induct Andre into the class. He's gonna read his sentence using the word flat.
Composer played A flat on the piano.
Okay, the composer played a flat on the piano.
I thought we were defining them.
Okay. So the composer is necessarily somebody who writes the music. So a composer isn't necessarily someone who performs, right? A performer is kind of equivalent to a musician, whereas a composer is equivalent to a writer, right? So you may want to restructure the sentence in this particular way. The composer wrote a flat for the piano, right? Which is a more appropriate phrase. Though composers do play as well. Okay, John, give us a sentence for interval.
Interval?
Yeah, interval.
There was a large interval between notes in the song.
Good. Okay, there was a large interval between notes in the song, right? So the distance between the notes is a matter of how far away they are, right? Far away. All right, let's go on to major. Major. You have something, Ryan?
Wait, Mr. Kiesner, you haven't got me yet.
Can you use major in a sentence? Okay, think about it. Jolie, you got one? You got one for minor? Okay, go ahead with minor.
No, I wrote minor.
Okay, all right. Who's got why? What are you doing? That's really cute. It's really cute. Okay, who's got one for major that they'd like to read? Wait, what? I like the fairy one myself. Like the fairy ones. Yeah, always change. I look so pretty with that. I was saying, you know. Okay, thank you for volunteering. Go ahead, Avery.
The man played a major scale, or a B flat major scale.
Okay, the man played a B flat major scale, right? You all can play C major scales. You can all play A minor scales, ideally. Okay, Caden.
Yeah.
Melody. Use melody in a sentence.
So just put what a fabulous melody in the song.
What?
What a fabulous melody in the song.
Oh, a declaration. What a fabulous melody in this song. Okay, very good. Very good. Okay, let's do. Let's see, Allison. Can you do minor?
Yeah, Minor?
Minor.
Okay. I didn't do minor, but I did, can I do a different word?
Sure.
Alright, can I do, pitch?
Sure.
Okay. Kind of that. We're not good at words, but alright. During choir, I had that pitch.
Okay. During choir, I had bad pitch. Right? I had bad pitch. Meaning this person probably sang out of tune. All right, who's got a sentence for minor that they could use for us?
That was a minor setback. Now back to my speech. Now back to my speech about minor notes.
Okay, good. Nice. Very good. So he used minor in two different ways. That was a minor setback, meaning that Terrence is going to give me his phone and we're going to move forward. And only a minor setback, meaning it's no big deal. And he proceeded to talk about the minor, what did you say, scale? Or
Minor notes.
the minor notes. So notes necessarily are not minor, but a combination of notes is. Right? Some notes are not minor in and of themselves, but only minor in the context. Right? So a C minor scale is minor because it's a group of notes that create a minor sound. Right? Okay? What about note? Can you use note in a sentence?
No. No. A set of notes play. A set of notes play. A set of notes play 1.5 step.
Okay, good. Notes. It's a general description of pitch or rhythm.
What about minor?
What about scale? Scale. Yeah. This one's kind of tough, but Liam, are you waving at me or you got one? You got one? Okay. Mike.
My scale.
There's 5 notes in this scale, and you call that a pentatonic scale, right from the video. Very good. A 5-note scale is a pentatonic scale. Yes.
For me, I didn't write down anything, but what I believe what the scale could be is how when I play the violin, sometimes when I'm not doing the melody or the harmony on the violin, sometimes I'm doing a part on the violin which could be a scale.
Yep.
Because like you use 3 fingers usually, but sometimes you have to use 4 to actually get a scale on
To make a scale, right. Very good.
And what I assume.
All right, so let's go on to sharp. Ankai, can you give us a sentence using the word sharp? Okay, so it's kind of a challenge, right? To use the word without defining it in a way, right? Kylie, can you give us a sentence using the word sharp? The composer wrote a C sharp. There was a good sentence. Terrence, could you read the sentence that you have for flat?
The person's singing voice was a little flat.
Okay, the person's singing voice was a little flat. You could also use sharp in this case. If someone is singing on top of the pitch, above the notes, you could say the person's singing voice was sharp, right? As a description of how out of tune they were, right? So that's one way of using these particular words. So you can use them to describe the symbol themselves, or you can use it to describe the act of performing something, right? All right, and lastly, who's got a word or a sentence for timbre? Timbre. Timbre.
I have one.
All right, Jonah, you can use timbre in a few ways. Give us a sentence using the word timbre. So think of a sentence using the word timbre. Timbre means the quality of sound.
Tambourine.
Yes.
The timbre of the symphony was great.
Okay. The timbre of the symphony was great.
Timbre.
Great. Okay, so when we describe timbre, we're talking about like textures, okay? Colors. Dark, light, rough, smooth, heavy, light, things like this. Yeah.
The note had a rough timbre.
The note had a rough timbre if I were to sing, right? My voice has a rough timbre. Right? So those are textures and qualities of sound, timbre. Okay? Alright, so make sure that your name is on that. You're not going to turn it in yet because I know some of you didn't complete it. So I only want you to turn it in if it's complete. Only turn it in complete. Pass it up if that's the case. If not, that's your homework for the next, hour until the class is over. Make sure you have definitions and sentences. Definitions and sentences. Thank you. Definitions and sentences, Brandon.
Some have like 2.
Oh, dude. Do you want the...
Make sure it's Okay, take a few minutes to get up, stretch, walk around, socialize. Okay?
It's still gonna work.
I'm giving you an opportunity to get up, move around. Come on now, 2-hour block period. Welcome, thank you. So return it.
I like their music a lot. The Family Guy.
Did you get yours done? And what about the extra? You got it?
Okay, so gentlemen, I'm going to have you move because I need to project something.
Okay.
Mr. Keysman.
Take the opportunity, get up and walk around, stretch it out.
Thank you, Alex.
Here's kids.
Wow. That says a lot more about your generation.
Hey, something.
It's not your fault. When you were
Just a prank. Prank, bro.
There's 5 buttons and 5
Fire by a half.
Are you pitch perfect? I haven't faced before. Did I? Haven't.
Alright, we're here.
I play guitar.
It's a song, but I can't really sing it. It's kind of embarrassing.
You're not good at playing it.
Right. So
What?
Oh, wait.
What am I not good at? I play
when I was in Spanish, my
Ross, sit.
song's about
See what is there?
Wow.
it's on a mountainside.
Wow.
I would say.
Excuse me.
Here's kids.
That's probably that's why they killed him. They killed him because they think that.
It's about Alex
That's what the song is.
Stop,
So
stop.
hilarious. Spanish singing out.
That's my amazing, like...
Okay. That's cool.
Yo, Jamal. Hey, amigo. Hey, amigo. Somehow I loaded up to get the
He said,
I think I'm
I don't know what it is. It's a picture.
So you know how those YouTubers like so there's this guy named Spinach, and he's saying, he says like, you wanna know how you wanna show the presentation? You would have to have like stuff that's like a good interesting title or interesting yeah, where you just draw random circles around random stuff and put arrows towards it.
Oh wow. Alright.
Alright, great.
Yeah, I don't know if he dies.
How do you
When they do die. When you come back and you'll see them.
Yeah,
Victor, I sent you that picture.
I didn't see it. Maybe you need to send it one more time. Did you actually send it?
Nope. I didn't see them. I never sent them.
I have an email account, but I don't really know how to get my own
Oh, come on, Victor.
Maybe you have to need for the picture of somebody else when you manage it.
Victor.
It's okay, it happens.
Oh yeah. Okay, Victor, check your phone. Okay, Victor, come over. Victor, check your phone. Damn. You're not in charge?
Maybe one of these. And screw it up. Yeah, not right now. You make me laugh a lot.
Victor! Victor! Oh God.
Take it if you want to try this.
All right. Hey, Alex, slice, please.
Oh, wait.
Gotcha.
Beautiful, thank you. All right, so you need the vocabulary sheet. We're going to talk about rhythm today. And this should take us almost to the end. But we're going to actually have you play drums. You're all going to get pairs of sticks, and you're going to create these little bucket bands. And you're going to perform like rhythmic compositions for one another. So that's what we're building up to. So grab your seats again, and you'll want that terminology sheet, which is on the back of the music theory curriculum.
Do we need sticks?
Looks like this.
No, just a terminology.
Like that. And we're doing just with rhythm on the bottom side here. Right there.
I don't have that at all.
Once you finish your vocabulary, your melody vocabulary, come on up and just put it on the stand here.
We need Mr. Kisner. We need to play drums.
You will later.
With Rhythm is the maverick in the musical toolbox. Of all music's components, rhythm is the most independent. Even without a melody, a bass line, or a harmony, a rhythmic pattern can stand on its own 2 feet. Rhythm is the part of music that interacts most immediately and spontaneously with our bodies. Without it, music would be pleasant enough, but it would be brain food. With rhythm, though, music becomes hypnotic and sensuous. What is it about rhythm that makes it so irresistible? Why do we surrender to it so easily? In this program, I'm going to put it under the microscope. We're going to find out how rhythm works.
Well, see right here.
As an interesting side note, rhythm, in a way, was banished from a lot of musical styles that originated in very conservative churches, religious practices. So in Christian music, early on, rhythm was not allowed, no drums, right? And the music moved very arrhythmically. It was like floating without rhythms. So, kind of interesting now that we find such a, I guess, profusion of rhythmic music. Again, any of these vocabulary sheets, turn them in up there once we're done.
You can make it whether you put them on your mask on. And I wish I could give every cell some commissary and I hope I bring that you
Different music from different places and different times, but they all share the same appeal. They all make us want to tap our feet, get up and dance, and sway to the beat. Rhythm is addictive and intoxicating, but it can also be fantastically complex, and we're going to explore its many forms in this program. At its core, though, there's one simple and fundamental ingredient. At the heart of all rhythm lies the concept of the beat, or the pulse. Our first sensation of pulse, of course, was that of our mother's heartbeat in the womb. But all mammals experience their mother's heartbeat, and only we humans like to dance, tap our feet, or play the castanets. It now seems more plausible that the key rhythmic moment for us Homo sapiens was when we got up off our knees, hands and backsides and started to walk on just our 2 hind legs. So having established our basic beat with our 2 feet, we can of course alter the pulse by speeding it up or slowing it down. In music, speed has an Italian name, tempo. When you see words like andante, largo, allegro or presto to describe a piece of music, these are all indications of how fast or slow the pulse should be. The tempo of our pulse may depend on our mood, our energy level, our level of coolness, our sense of urgency, excitement or fear. Most of the most popular speeds in music are associated with various forms of forward movement: shuffling, galloping, jogging, hopping, pouncing, marching, bouncing or running.
All right, so you have a definition there already, tempo. Right, tempo. Okay, so try this for a moment. Take your own pulse. Take your pulse. Right here. Or you can feel here if your heart is pounding quite. So is your pulse going fast or slow, moderate, in between? Some of you athletes, if you're like a distance athlete, or endurance athletes, you'll have a pretty slow pulse because your heart can work pretty efficiently without having to pump quickly, right? And then those of us who maybe are less athletic might have a higher pulse. It also might be an indication of stress, like if you're stressed out, sometimes your pulse will go up as well.
Or if you do cocaine.
Or if you do drugs, yes. So if you take your pulse and it's very fast, somebody might still be sending a lecture. But all right, so this is called a biorhythm. A biorhythm, and as he was saying, all mammals have this, right? Anything with a heart that pumps blood, you have this movement going through your body. But as he said, the translation from these biorhythms into music didn't really happen until we started to walk. How interesting is that? Right? That may have been the beginnings of our rhythmic interpretation of sound. Right?
Pulse is so important that it's present in all types of music, even if you can't hear it. Take this piece of classical music. Where's the rhythm? Where are the drums? Don't be misled. Rhythm in classical music is just as complex and vital as it is in other forms of music. It's just that the pulse is usually implied, not thrashed out. Of course, you could add drums if you really wanted to. Not an improvement, but it proves it has a beat. There are many benefits to making your pulse implicit rather than explicit, hiding it away in the minds of your players and your listeners rather than shoving it in their faces. One benefit is you can have music of great serenity and tranquility, to act as an antidote to exciting, adrenaline-pumping beats with loads of percussion. A relaxing walk along the seashore at sunset, for example, rather than a night out in Ibiza town. A lot of classical music relies on the ticking clock in the listener's head. It exploits the spaces between the beats. Take this piece by Dvorak, played for us by Stephen Isserlis in his own arrangement. Right hand subtly tells us what the basic pulse is, with its flowing, ticking, short beats. Meanwhile, a cello solo plays a tune with one simple repeated rhythm. So rhythm, stripped down to its bare bones, has a choice of pulses and a choice of speeds. But this is only half the story. To understand how rhythm really works, we have to look at how these pulses are broken up and given different emphasis. We're going to get a groove going by putting all these ingredients together. of walking gave us a feel for a regular, repetitive beat, left, right, left, right. What's more, it instilled in Homo sapiens an instinct to divide those beats by multiples of 2, like our 2 feet. The minute you start subdividing the pulse is when you have real fun with rhythm.
You could take the basic walking pace and count 2 mini beats for each step. Or 4 for each step. We tend to subdivide beats into 2, but we could in theory divide them into any number we wanted, and various other options have been tried over the centuries. One very popular option is to take 2 beats and divide them into smaller groups of 3.
I'm sorry, I have that bar up the whole time so you can see some of the words. But subdivision, right? Subdivision. Did you catch it? From the context, what are you saying? Smaller groups. Yeah, smaller groups. Smaller groups. So you have this big chunk of sound, right? Big group of sound, and it can be one long note. Right? And I can chop that note up into many, many smaller notes. Right? That's subdivision. The smaller counterparts or smaller rhythms that make up a larger rhythm. Breaking it down to a consequent part. So I love to use rulers for these analogies because they just make a lot of sense to people. You know, this is a yardstick. Let's just pretend it's 1 foot. Let's pretend this is 1 foot. I can break it down into half of a foot, and then quarters of a foot, and then eighths of a foot, and 16ths. And every time I break that, the group is getting smaller and smaller, right? But the foot still stays the same. It's just that the subdivisions in between get smaller and smaller. Okay. Any questions about that subdivision? Yes, sir.
So can you be like nerds?
There can be. And this is especially important in non-European music. And music that's originated primarily in Latin America, Africa, a few other places. The triplet or the groups of 3 are subdivisions that are much more prominent there in that kind of music than anywhere else. This. 1, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3, 2, 3. You don't hear that kind of music in Europe. Right, it's coming from, you know, like Moorish influence, it's coming from North African and Persian influences. You know, Persian especially, a lot of like ancient and Middle Eastern music. That has a lot of 3s, groups of 3s. But in Europe, we have pretty much straightforward, you know, up and down kind of music.
This pattern is one of the mainstays of Anglo-Celtic folk music. Its success in this part of the world may have something to do with its resonance with speech patterns and popular poetry. A limerick, for example, follows this exact same subdivision of beats.
There was a young lady from Ickenham who went on a bus trip to Twickenham. She drank too much beer, which made her feel queer, so she took off her boots and was sickening. But the honest truth is that triple time patterns were always the offspring of double time. You can take even the most famous triple time tunes ever and hear the underlying 2s and 4s in their DNA. The Blue Danube Waltz, for example, sure enough goes 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. But you can also hear the binary operating system going on behind it. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1. There are many ways of exploiting the subdivision of beats, but the simplest way of all is to have them on top of each other, so you have beats of different length happening at the same time. So you might start with these 2 big long beats, these minims, and you divide them in half, and you get 4 of these crotchet beats, and then you divide them in half, and you get 8 of these quavers, and then smallest of all, down here, divide them in half, 16 little semiquavers. George Frederick Handel used this building block formula to great effect when he wrote an anthem for the coronation of George II in 1727, Zadok the Priest, a piece that has been heard at every British coronation since.
The opening introduction overlays the smallest unit, known as semiquavers, with notes of exactly double the length, known as quavers. The repetition of these quavers and semiquavers over and over builds an incredible tension into the piece. When the choir finally starts singing, full majestic effect is achieved by having them sing in our slowest 2 units of time, the crotchet and minim units. Handel's Zadok the Priest introduction may change its chords, but the rhythm is pretty constant. In Philip Glass's opera Akhenaten, written 250 years later, we hear a similar pattern, but this time there is a subtle but significant difference. What's happening to Philip Glass's chugging along rhythm is a trick perfected by African musicians centuries ago. The pulse isn't changing, but as the pattern repeats and repeats, something else is changing. In musical jargon, we say that the accent is shifting. Accent is the 4th key element in rhythm, along with pulse, tempo, and the subdivision of the beat. So we'd better find out what it is and how it works.
Accent, right? Accent, he's about to talk about this. If we play notes evenly, right? Try this with me, just clap here. We don't have any groupings happening. Right? We don't have any groupings happening. Now what I want you to do is accent every other note. Ready? 1, 2, here we go. Okay, now every 3, ready? Now every 4. Okay, good. So now we've created meter by doing that, by creating accents. So you can already kind of suppose what accent actually is now. How is it defined? Just by doing that activity.
Accent is all about which beats are important and which are not. The important ones get stressed, the others fit in neatly between.
Let me show you by using the running technique of Olympian athlete Abby Yetipan as an example.
Because Abby's a human and not a machine, one of her legs is ever so slightly stronger than the other, so she leads off onto her right foot. Those 2 steps, right, left, are the nucleus of all our rhythm. Strong, weak, strong, weak. We've accented the first beat in a pair, and the minute we repeat the motion, we have created our first groove. So fundamental to our rhythmic instinct are these accents that we even imagine them when they don't actually exist. We can't help ourselves. Listen to this pulse, which could be the ticking of a clock. Listen for long enough and you'll find yourself organising this ticking into groups of 2 or 4. Your brain automatically gives one of the beats an emphasis by default. As it continues, you might even start to hear favourite tunes in your head ticking along to this pulse, with all their important wanted accent. But there's no accent or emphasis in this electronically generated beat at all. I deliberately fixed it so there wasn't. Your brain has superimposed a hierarchy on the beats. It has created virtual accents.
You can, if you like, take any collection of equal beats and give one or two of them special emphasis. So if you had 8 beats to play with, you could divide them into 2 groups of 4 and put an accent on the beginning of each, like Handel does in Zadok the Priest. While Philip Glass starts off his Akhenaten prelude with the same grouping of 4 as Handel, pretty soon he starts to change where that accent falls. So it turns into this. Later still to this. And finally, this. This trick of shifting accents was the rhythmic device of choice for the so-called minimalist composers in Western classical music in the second half of the 20th century. But this had been meat and veg for African musicians for thousands of years, where they might improvise for hours on end, making subtle and incremental changes to the accents every so often. We've made a pulse, we've played around with its speed, we've subdivided it into smaller units, and we've given those units accents. Our voyage of rhythmic discovery is almost complete, but not quite. Subdividing beats and giving them accents has one important side effect that has given an extra charge to rhythm of excitement and energy over the centuries, but particularly in the 20th and 21st. Side effect is called syncopation. It's music's red light district, where rhythm gets loose, playful, and mischievous.
Syncopation was a term that cropped up a lot in the 1920s during the jazz boom to describe jazz's new jerky rhythms. Though believe it or not, both the term and the phenomenon had been around for ages. Syncopation is a musical sleight of hand, whereby you sneakily shift a beat slightly ahead of or slightly behind where you expect it to be. It makes music sound more fun, basically. Instead of sounding mechanical, mathematical, and machine-like, it makes things sound human and quirky. Here's a simple example from Bach. It's a short keyboard piece, an invention, and this is what it would sound like without its syncopation.